Welcome to Amerex Connections, our podcast where we connect you with industry professionals. Today we are welcoming back Jamie Knowles, who is with Amerex here. Jamie, welcome back.
Good to see you, David.
Good to see you as always. I know recently you've been real busy redoing and kind of revamping some of the work that was originally done by Fred Goodnight and also our good friend Craig Volkert. Would you like to sort of give us a little bit of insight into what you got there?
Yeah, absolutely. So, 20, 30, 40 years ago, Amerex had a regular practice of building tech tips and common myths and resources for technicians that are out in vans doing work every day. If you think about them, they were a little synopsis of a particular subject, and it would give you all the ins and the outs of that particular subject when you were servicing that kind of fire equipment. And when I started in this industry, the company I worked for had a binder, and all new employees would go to that binder and go through each of these Amerex tech tips and Amerex common myths and white papers of different products and things about different sections of our industry. And they were a really good resource. So they've gotten a little outdated over the years, right? So we are going through that inventory of tech tips and we're rewriting those, right? And then we're supporting those tech tips with blogs, right? And in those blogs, they have several ideas or thoughts and examples of that apply to that particular tech tip. So today we're talking about Class B fires. Right, so our friend Derek Wester, who is our fire investigator, and Derek protects us in those fire investigation situations and goes out anytime there's an incident with Amerex product. And his expertise has led him to write these tech tips for us, and they're a foundational sort of just the facts kind of documents. And in the example of Class B fires, the one we'll start with is Tech Tip 47, which is for the selection of fire extinguishers for specific Class B hazards. And it lays out all of the NFPA and IFC code passages that describe what extinguishers to use for Class B fires. And it explains what compliance flow fire extinguishers are and the UL ratings of those extinguishers and how essentially the longer the discharge time is, right, the higher the UL rating is. Right? And then it goes in to explain that not all fires need a compliance flow type of fire extinguisher, right? The obstacle fires, the 3D fires, and the pressure fires demand and require 1 pound a second flow rate. So you need a high flow, a fast flow fire extinguisher to tackle those kinds of fires. And the tech tip that Derek wrote lays out all of that factual information that a technician would need to give recommendations to their end user. Right? So it's a really nice synopsis for them to use. And then we followed up that tech tip with a couple of blogs, right, to give them some examples of how to use these tech tips. So the first blog we did was fast flow versus compliance flow. Right, and in this particular blog, I wrote 2 different stories in it. The first story was at a fire school when I was a kid. And the second one is a shipboard fire when I was in the Navy. And it's kind of a good opportunity for me to say that I started my career in the U.S. Navy, and our industry, like you, sir, right, is filled with plenty of veterans, right? And we have a large population of guys that were shipboard firefighters, right, that were Air Force firefighters, or in one capacity or another did firefighting exercises in the military and then serviced fire equipment. And then they've transitioned into our industry of fire equipment service and maintenance and installation, So they have a really good background in these places. So I think that these 2 stories will resonate with that audience. So growing up, I was a Sea Cadet, which is a youth group for kids that want to join the Navy. And that took me to a fire school. Actually, it took me to a 2-week boot camp in San Diego, and I needed it. But during that boot camp, it was run by Navy instructors. They took us to the 32nd Street Fire School. Right? They put us 14-year-olds in breathing apparatuses and turnouts. And then the professional firefighters dumped over a barrel of JP5 jet fuel and set it on fire. Right? So, and when they did that, they walked up to the fire. Each firefighter had a kid with them, and they gave us a 30-pound Purple K extinguisher, right? Which, by the way, for a 14-year-old is a lot. But we walked up, and by God, we were able to extinguish that fire over and over again with these 30-pound Purple K extinguishers because we had a nice spill fire, we had an extinguisher with a good flow rate and was just able to put that fire out over and over and over again. Taught me right out of the gate how much thermal energy comes off of a fire, how hot it is, how much distance you need from that fire to be able to put it out. And it put me squarely in the corner of being a pyro, and put me on the path to this job for sure. As I tell people, I discharged my first extinguisher, and I've been addicted to this business ever since. Right, so. But you compare that fire, that spill fire, with another fire that happened on my ship. And in the blog, I kind of lay out the entire scenario. But essentially, my ship was headed to the Persian Gulf at best speed. And so we were doing like 33 knots, which is a lot for a 1966 ship. And we were pushing the limits of that old girl. And when we were doing that, there was a lube oil spray fire in number 1 engine room. And the main shaft has bearings that go around it, and they put pressurized lube oil into those bearings to keep it rolling. Well, that got hot, that bearing seized up, and we had a lube oil spray fire shooting about 15 feet. And I was on the at-sea fire party, so I was the first responder to the space. And when I went down the ladder with a 30-pound Purple K in my hand, the machinist mates were already down there fighting the fire with the 30-pound Purple Ks that were there. And it took 7 30-pound Purple Ks to extinguish that fire. And the only reason it really went out is because we were able to diminish the fire enough and contain it enough to shut off the pump. Right? And so that illustrated very quickly to me that when you have fuel under pressure spraying out, you've got to have a fire extinguisher that can match that velocity, that can match that pressure. Right? And if you have a regular compliance flow fire extinguisher, it's not going to put that fire out. And I remember just vividly these machinist mates who were highly trained, using quality product, right, doing just what they were supposed to do here. And they just didn't have the proper tool for that pressure fire. Now, they contained it. Right? We were able to get that fire out, shut the lube oil pump off as stated, repair the bearings and move on. Right? So. But it did illustrate that when we are dealing with pressure, 3D, and obstacle type of Class B fires, a compliance extinguisher is just not enough, right? It's just not enough. We need that 1 pound a second flow rate to really overwhelm that pressure from the pressure fire or those obstacles. So we wanted to tell that story, or those two stories, so that in each technician's mind, they have an example of when to use high flow and when to use compliance flow.
Right.
Yeah. And we also like to be as relatable as possible. And so we've got a lot of military guys in the industry, and I hope that resonates with them and sets a good example of that.
Yeah.
So,
well, it definitely does give a realistic view of the volume required in those situations. That's a very good illustration you got there.
Thank you. Yeah. I hope it resonates with everyone, honestly.
I'm sure it will. Now, while we're on the topic, we've had a number of airplane-related incidents over the past couple of years. Is there anything specific that we would want to consider on airline or aircraft protection?
For sure, yeah. Last year I wrote a blog about those fires, those incidents in the U.S., and there were 5 different incidences where there were fires on planes. One particular instance where the plane pulled straight up to the terminal on fire. And a United Airlines employee grabbed a Purple K wheel unit and was able to extinguish that fire, facilitating the egress of the people from the plane. Wonderful success story, right? But also there were plenty of other examples of where aircraft extinguishers are getting used. So we kind of went backwards on this one. We started with the blog, right? And then we said, well, we need to really support this with a tech tip. Right, so Derek went about writing a tech tip, number 46, that really lines out all of the NFPA, IFC, and FAA codes and requirements for fire extinguishers on the tarmac to protect airplanes from the ground. Right. And then we also reinvigorated a tech tip that we had before, tech tip number 20, which was on not using ABC dry chemical around aircraft, right? So we had the the incidents out there that everybody was seeing on the news, right? We supported that with the blog and said, hey, these are the things that you need to pay attention to, and really look in these places for the different kinds of extinguishers that protect airplanes. But then we followed it up with the facts. Right? Now we have a synopsis that a technician can use in Tech Tip 46, where it lays out the FAA, the IFC, and the NFPA codes that you need. But also on the second page, it shows you a table with all the Amerex fire extinguisher models on the right, and all of the vehicles that they protect on the left, and all the rating information and stuff that you would need in the middle. Right? So any technician can grab this tech tip if they're going out to an airport. And let's just say they've done a lot of fire extinguishers, but they haven't actually protected an airport. Right? Now they have a tool to use. Right? There's never a substitute for the actual NFPA standards and codes. You need to have access to those and go in and use those. But these tech tips are a synopsis of those things, and they help a technician understand where to look for these codes, where to get them, and where they're all at. Right? Because it's not always obvious. NFPA's got a ton of standards. And you don't always know where to look. Right? So we really want to point them in the right direction so they can reference the right standards, reference the right codes, and recommend the right fire extinguishers on each piece of equipment on an airfield. Right? And if you think about an airfield, it's pretty diverse. Right? And that brings me to tech tip number 20, which we need to cover. I mentioned it briefly, but ABC dry chemical is expressly prohibited on flight lines. And it's simple. It's a corrosive agent. When it gets moisture in it, if it sticks on the airframe, it can corrode the airframe, right? And nobody wants that. Right? And there's plenty of documentation to support that, right? So Tech Tip 20 takes all of that documentation, puts it into one place for a technician to use. So if one of your customers said, why can't I use ABC, right? Here's your answer. Go on our website, grab Tech Tip number 20, show it to them. It shows all the passages that you need to support that, right? And that's an important thing, because when you say no, you can't do something, your customer's immediately going to say why and support that with documentation. Right? So this, again, points the technicians into the right place and says, hey, here's where you get started. Right? Here's the code you're looking for. Grab them and show your customer. So,
perfect. Yeah, that'll be nice to have it all concisely in one location. Speaking of, where can our technicians find this information? Where are the tech tips going to be posted and so on?
So when we put out new technician or new tech tips or new blogs, they're always posted on social media. They're always going out to all of our distributors on email blasts and things of that nature. But really, they live on the Amerex website. If you go to amerex-fire.com, you will be able to hit Learning Center and then click over, and under Learning Center you will find our tech tips and our Flashpoint blog. And there are quick, easy links, and within, when you hit each of those, there's a running total of each of those documents for you to download and use, and or just read. So, but they're there for technician use. They're there for our distributors to utilize. We have always been an industry with a decent amount of turnover. But in recent years, probably the last 10 years, our turnover has really accelerated, right? For a few reasons. We were long in the tooth. We were a fairly old industry. So we had a lot of people retire, right, and go off into the sunset, which we all hope to do one day. But we had to backfill those positions with younger people, right? The pandemic made everybody turn over their workforce, right, whether we liked it or not. And then consolidation in our industry, where there's a lot of change in ownership, has also facilitated a lot of rotation of employees or turnover employees. So it's never been more important for our distributors to have resources to bring new employees up to speed. Right? It's never been more important for us to give resources to our distributors to get those technicians out onto the job doing what they need to do quickly, effectively, and correctly. Right? And these tech tips and blogs, we hope, are doing that. They should fit things like a monthly safety meeting, right? Where you can take one topic and several documents and show them to your employees and do a continuing education situation with your techs, right? And that's what we're trying to build. And in the coming months and years, we're going to continue that practice. So the last one I did that's on this Class B subject, it doesn't seem like it's related, but it is. We wrote a blog last year about, and a tech tip last year about oxidizers. right? Which doesn't seem like the same topic, right? But in the blog, I wrote an example of the pharmacy in a hospital. And in that pharmacy, there was a stack of hydrogen peroxide in boxes. And then on the other side, there was a stack of isopropyl alcohol, right, in boxes. And so you walk into what appears to be a light hazard. But then when you add up the amount of Class B hazard there, you quickly move into an extra hazard. So now your extinguisher's got to be a lot bigger, right? But then you look at the configuration of those liquids, and you're like, okay, these are on shelves, right, and in boxes, and there are things stacked in front of them. So we have a three-dimensional type of Class B fire. We have an obstacle type of Class B fire. So you're going to need a high flow rate, a 1 pound a second flow rate to handle those two things for the isopropyl alcohol. Right. But you can't use dry chemical on an oxidizer, right? So you need to choose a fire extinguisher for the oxidizer portion of that hazard, right? And label that extinguisher for use around oxidizers, right? And then label, it should come shipped this way, labeled, but label your oxidizers as oxidizers, right? And have the appropriate extinguisher to protect this hazard, and then another extinguisher to protect this hazard. And that seems cumbersome, but this is a real-world situation. I mean, that is something that you could apply in many different spaces. And the real wisdom of that tech tip is asking the question, what's in those boxes? Right? What's in that facility? Not just looking and moving on, but understanding what's actually there and what fire extinguishers are protecting it. Are they the right ones, or should I be recommending a couple of different kinds? Right? Exactly. Yeah. So we think and hope that these tech tips supported by blogs, right, are a really good strategy for our distributors to use to bring their technicians up to speed when they're new, do continuing education for their guys, and just continue to build their knowledge base. Right? Exactly. And we also want to give everybody, expertise in using Amerex products, right? And we genuinely know that our products are the best on the market. And we genuinely know that they can solve problems for our distributors, right, and protect hazards for our end users. And we've got some products that do things that a lot of people don't, other manufacturers don't do, right? So this is with the sales portion of our podcast today. Our Z Series product is exceptional. It is a stored pressure product with a 12-year warranty. You can get it in compliance flow. You can get it in high flow. It has a 50-foot discharge range. You can stand 50 feet from a giant Class B fire and start that discharge and have that thermal energy reduce as you get closer. That's a very big deal that I learned at 14, right? So that really take a look at our Z-Series product. From a maintenance standpoint, it's easier, right? It's a very succinct and easy product to maintain. It deploys real well. It lasts in a very harsh environments, right? So we feel we've got a winning formula there, right? And for Class B hazards, look we want our distributors to look really closely at that Z-Series product and consider it when they're talking to their end users.
Absolutely. None better. Well, it's really gratifying to know that all this information is readily available for all of the technicians out in the field, because, I mean, a lot of times we get questions come in, and now we have a resource that we can turn directly over to them. That's fantastic.
We hope they're valuable. The next thing is, what do our distributors need next?
Right.
So we really want to look at our distributors and say, hey, what ideas do you have? What information do your technicians need education on? Right? Let us know at Amerex. Let your regional sales manager know. If you know me, contact me. If you're at one of our training classes, let David know. But tell them, and we will consider that. If I can put together a good tech tip that's factually accurate from codes and standards, and then support that with different examples, then we will continue to do that from subject to subject to subject. So give us some ideas. We'll be happy to support you with those documents and that information.
That is fantastic. Well, that concludes our time today. Jamie, thank you very much. I do appreciate it. A lot of good work you've done there. I do appreciate your and Derek's effort.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's important to understand Derek's doing a lot of work on that factual side of the tech tips and really setting a foundation for us, and then it gives me the ability to elaborate with some examples and some ideas.
Absolutely.
Right? So appreciate your time today. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you for joining us for Amerex Connections.